I would like to introduce our first speaker. This first session is called Leveraging LibAnswers FAQ to Proactively Answer Questions. And our speaker is Sharon Whitfield from the Cooper Medical School of Rowan University. Sharon is the Emerging Technologies Librarian at Cooper Medical School of Rowan University in Camden, New Jersey. 5 librarians support over 400 students, 300 faculty, 800 residents, and over 2,500 hospital staff and physicians. This is why she's currently constantly looking for new ways to leverage technology to improve services. And with that, Sharon?
Give me one quick second to share out my screen. Okay, to start off, I have 4 polling questions just to help me understand a little bit more about how you feel about chat service. So, Bill, would you mind putting those up?
Yep, here we go. Here's the first question. So the first question is, do you use chat? We've got yes or no. Please dial in your answers. All right, it's been about 30 seconds. We have 60 of 80 people, 61 of 80 people that have voted.
Perfect. And then I have the second question.
Okay, hang on. Let's see, going to question number 2, launching the poll now. The question is, if you do use chat service, how many chats do you receive a day? Sorry for the poor wording on my part. All right, it's been 30 seconds. Looks like 1 to 5, we've got 53% at 25 people, 5 to 10 chats, 25% of our audience at 12 people, and more than 10, 23% of our audience at 11 people. I'm gonna end the poll now.
Okay, and we have one final question.
All right, I'm gonna close this out. I have 2 other questions, Sharon. Which one?
Oh, go ahead and just, you're right, we have 2 other questions. Please go ahead and put the other 2 up.
Okay. The third question is, if you do not use chat service, how many feel that your library is too short-staffed to use a chat service? All right, it's been over 30 seconds. We didn't get as many participants at that question, but 25% of attendees do feel that their library is short-staffed to use chat service. That's 5 out of 20 votes. 75% said no. Now it's 76 at 16 votes. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll, share the results really quick. All right, and then I'm going to launch the final question. Our last question for the poll is, if you do use chat service, did I just ask that question?
No, that was if you don't use it, if you aren't using
it. I apologize.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and relaunch that. Relaunching the poll will exist polling results. Okay, here we go, folks. If you do use chat service, how many feel that your library is too short-staffed to use a chat service? All right, it's been 30 seconds. Thanks for everyone who participated. We have 51 votes. 8%, or 4 out of 51, said yes, they do feel that the library is too short-staffed to use a chat service. 92%, or 47 out of 51 votes, said no, they do not feel that the library is short-staffed to use a chat service.
Well, thank you very much for answering my questions. It really does give me some insight into how you might be using your chat, or whether or not there might be some barriers to using their chat service. As Rebecca said, the background in my organization is we have 400 students, 80 faculty members at our medical school. We also support a hospital located in Camden, New Jersey. We have about 800 residents, 2,000 hospital staff and physicians, and we have a patron population that's very diverse. We have to offer traditional academic services as well as a 24/7 service, since we have some of our students here at the hospital. We have residents constantly here. We have a major trauma center here, so we really have to operate somewhat at a 24/7 service. And we also have differing skill sets. So we have some users or some patrons that have a high knowledge of library services, and then we have some with no knowledge of library services. Same with technology skills. We have some with high levels of technology skills and some with no technology skills. So here are some of the services that we provide. We do complex literature search requests for our physicians. So that's a very labor-intensive process, including systematic reviews, which often can take months for us to actually complete, if not longer than that. We also do instruction sessions. We do about 6 instruction sessions a month. We're also heavily embedded in the curriculum, meaning that we have faculty members that teach courses. We also participate in our active learning groups. We do reference duties, collections development work. And then we're also tenured faculty members. So we have faculty obligations, such as service to the profession, being members of MLA, and also our local organizations. We have service to the organization. We have to serve on departmental committees, also university-wide committees. Some of us have union obligations. We also have to publish and present. And then we also have a lot of different methods of ways for our patrons to communicate with us. Phone, email, pop-in, scheduled, however we can really get to them. So there's only 5 of us to support both organizations and our very diverse patron population. And right now we're actually short-staffed, so there's only 4 of us because someone just moved on to another institution. So that kind of leaves us being really pulled in different directions. We have very traditional needs with, for an academic library, but then we also have this need that we need to offer and be able to answer questions 24/7. So when I said to the librarians, hey, let's offer another service, they definitely fell into that 4% where they felt that they were definitely too short-staffed to do that. In fact, I really had to sell them on this idea, and it took months for me to do that. One of the things I keep saying to my colleagues is that since we are so short-staffed, we really have to find ways to leverage technology to really keep administrative duties down, and also to make sure that we're still touching base with our patrons and really meeting those needs of those high technology skilled patrons. So I came across this really great solution that Grand Valley State University had. I noticed they had a ask a question button on there. I'm very inquisitive. I clicked on it and I took a look to see what it actually does. And then I noticed that they had all of that code available, open source, for you to utilize. And I am somebody who really likes to go out there and explore, and when somebody makes something open source, I take advantage of it if I can. So, and the other thing that I thought was great is that this particular modification, this open source code, is actually really, really easy to modify in order to make it something for your own organization. So there's only really 3 things that you need to do to modify this code for it to work with you. First, you need to copy the code into an HTML file and put it up onto a server, which that was pretty easy to do. I didn't have any problems doing that at all. Then I had to find the system ID, and I'll show you how I did that. And then I had to create a libchat widget because you need this thing called the hash code. So this is exactly how I went about finding my system ID. It's kind of buried. You have to go into the admin, and there's this section in LibAnswers called Widgets and API, and then you have to go to an API tab, and then they show you that there is, I'm going to see if I can use this little button here. To do spotlight, there's this little code right, oh, well, that's not spotlighting, that's drawing. Let's see. There's this code right here, and that's actually your system ID. So it's pretty easy to grab that system ID. I'm going to go to my next slide. And this is all I had to do is just replace within that code that I downloaded. I just had to replace line 62 of the code in the script, which said IID 1050 with my identified system ID, and in this case it was 446, excuse me. Then I had to just simply create a libchat widget. And that's fairly easy. That's located right from the administration area of LibAnswers. And then you just go down to widgets and API. And this is really pretty easy. These widgets actually, I feel like they kind of create themselves. You simply have to name the widget, then say which queues you want to monitor. For us, we have 2 queues, a circulation and also a reference queue. And then you can decide what type of widget type you'd like to have. You can do some modifications of the actual look and feel of the widget. I didn't feel that that was necessary. I just went ahead and saved it, and that gave me the next piece that next hash code that I needed in order to, and that chat ID that I needed in order to modify the code. So this is exactly what you get after you create your chat your chat widget. So here you have this weird number, but right in front of it, it says hash equals A6. So what I did is I copied all the way from A6E all the way down to BE because I needed that to change it in my code. So what I did is I went into the actual code that I copied, and I replaced line 74 of the code in the script with the chat ID, which can be found right next to the chat widget that you created. So here my chat ID is 3848. So I replaced that in the code. So that was pretty easy. And then I had to replace line 102 of the code with the new hash code that I had. So here it is, A6E all the way down to BE. Very easy to do, at least for me, it was pretty easy to do. And then I started testing to see how it worked. So I just wanted to give you a live demo of how our chat works so you can see how the chat actually works and how LibAnswers is used in, I'm going to try to move this, close out this arrow because I'm sure it's irritating some of you because it's irritating me. So all they have to do in order to start to really utilize this new service that we created with utilizing that Grand Valley State University code is all they have to do is click on Ask a Question. And right now we're on, and so right now we have some of our staff monitoring that queue. So when somebody goes in and types a question, you can see what really happens is the questions get pulled from the LibAnswers. So we've created a bank of LibAnswer FAQ that this pulls from. And so then what they can do is they simply can click on any of these questions to have them answer whatever they need to have answered, or they can decide to just skip and go directly to a library staff member, and then that starts the chat for them. So they can definitely always have that option. The other thing though is if they decide, and I'm gonna import EndNote, if they decide that one of those questions does meet their needs, they can click on it. They would get the entire information about, you know, how we answered that question. And then they also have the ability to add comments and help us with kind of giving us feedback on how those questions worked for them or whether or not they liked it. They can also see who answered it and when. And I find that that's really helpful to a lot of our users. Now, you may be wondering what happens if you don't have somebody monitoring the chat queue. Well, what they then get is they get this, so let's say they have a question about our fax machines, which, believe it or not, we get a lot of questions about that. What happens is they get this offline skip and search the CMSRU FAQ. And then what they'll see is they'll get into this CMSRU FAQ that we've created. And if we haven't answered their question using the answers that we've already created, they can simply click on Submit Your Question, and then that question gets emailed to us and we answer it at a later date. So we found that that's been working pretty well. I will say we haven't had anyone actually ask a question using that button. And so that's really a real great testament as far as how much we've really built up our FAQ database and how much we've actually entered. So that's really good to see. So here are some of the monthly statistics of answers that are viewed. In January, we had about 76. In December, we had 87. February already we're up to 27. So these are questions that probably would have been either emailed to us or somebody would have had to call, or they would have had to do just a chat with us. And the way I'm looking at this type of service is that we are proactively trying to answer their questions for them. So even they're not getting that human interaction, but we're still providing them a 24/7 service, giving them the answers that they need at a moment that they need it. So it's really been working very well, and we've gotten really great feedback regarding using this. So here are some of the monthly statistics of chats. So what you'll see is that we had a significant amount of chats in September of 2016, and now in February 2017, we're very low as far as our chats go. I will say we had just one this month so far. In January, we had 2. And our overall, we've had 18 since we've actually adopted this format, which we adopted in November. So you can see that we're doing really well as far as keeping our chats down to a minimum, which is why I think a lot of people are starting to love this service. We're still reaching our patrons. We're providing them a 24/7 service. We're getting them when they have the question, which I think is something that they really love and they enjoy. So these are some of the client ratings. These are the 18 that we've had, and as far as the chats go. And I will say, because the chats are so rare, you really provide this, you're really getting a question that is a little bit more in depth. It's not just, you know, where's the color printer, or where can I find a scanner? It's actually a question that your FAQ isn't answering at all. It's something like, I think one of the chats that stands out in my head is they were actually having problems accessing a resource. And so by letting them utilize getting them to that chat service, we could quickly find a workaround to get them to be able to utilize that resource. And that's been really helpful to make sure that we have those opportunities for them. So as with any new service, as an emerging technologies librarian, I constantly look at what are some of the things that I've learned from bringing forward this new service. One of the things I will say is marketing is still very necessary. Even though we have that ask a question button pretty prominently displayed on our page, we still find that there's a lot of people who don't notice it, or that they just don't realize that's what it's going to do. It's probably should be a little bit bigger, but we've kind of debated back and forth on that. And the other thing I will say is, every single session that we go into, when we talk about this ask a question button, our students and our residents love it. And it's because it's providing them that 24/7 service, that when we're not here, we're still able to try to answer their EndNote questions as best we could. And I think that they really like the fact that they then can come back and identify with a librarian, or they're watching a video that we've added to the FAQ as well. The other thing with this is tagging really becomes important. Early on, when I first implemented this, I had about, EndNote is so very popular for our patrons. They ask a lot of questions about that. So we had about 15 questions about EndNote. And at first, only 5 of them were showing up when they did the search from that how do I button, or how to the I box. And so what I realized is, if I didn't tag the EndNote, only 5 of those keyword answers came up. So tagging became really important again. This is probably an obvious learning experience, but online chatting is not natural to everyone. I find that some of our older docs, they'll say hi, and then you'll wait about 2 minutes, and then for a response, but there's no response, and then maybe 5 minutes later you'll see a new chat window from them. So it's something that you just have to be cognizant of, is that chatting's just not natural to everyone. Not everyone will love the idea of no human interaction. I kind of find this funny, because in an email, it is a human interaction, but it's still, there's still some disconnect, and the turnaround time is a lot longer. But I will say, fortunately, my director allowed me to go forward with this service, but she really regrets the idea of there's no human interaction. They're not meeting with a librarian. But my argument is that these are pretty simplistic questions. These aren't questions that they necessarily need to have the human interaction. Some people will use this chat service for very complex questions. We get people who ask whether or not we're recording something, or how they can find something. And then the last learning experience is, people really forget that they should be monitoring the chat service. And the reason is because we don't get that many chats. So it's a constant reminder to just make sure that that you monitor the chat service and that you see that it's necessary to take a look at it. We've missed a few chats because people forget to monitor the chat service because we get such a few amount of chats now. So I wanted to give some references. This is actually the link to the GVSU code. I really encourage you to take a look at it. It's really easy code to manipulate, and it's really easy to just go in there, take a look at your system ID, create a hash code, or get your hash code from creating a widget. I also encourage you to take a look at how we implemented it here at CMSRU and explore some of the FAQs that we've created. I will say we only have 90 FAQs, but I'm constantly monitoring emails that come in or phone calls and saying, oh, we should add that to our FAQ. And that's really building this FAQ so it's meeting the needs of our students. I also take a look at the statistics of the FAQ and constantly go in there and see if we can tweak an answer to make it a little bit better, or if we can find a way to make it a little bit more robust, or could we add a video to it. I also want to give you my email address, because if you're intimidated by the code at all, but you want to start looking into adding this service, please email me. I'd be more than happy to help you with it. It's really, like I said, it's really easy to do, and it's a great way of leveraging technology in order to make your chat service more efficient, and you'll be getting much better questions. I think we're getting much better questions than we used to. So at this juncture, I want to open it up to any questions that the audience might have for me.
Okay, so far, yeah, so if anyone has any questions, please type them in the Q&A and we will funnel them through to Sharon. We did have one person early on in the presentation, they made a comment just that they don't consider themselves to be short-staffed because they use Ask Us 24/7. But if they had to staff the chat on their own, they would consider themselves to be too short-staffed.
Yeah. I will say that one of the things that I've been finding that we really get a lot of questions or a lot of views to our LibAnswers at night. So it's been really great to be able to provide that 24/7 service to them, because it's something that we weren't able to do before.
Yeah, when you showed how it worked, my jaw dropped. I was like, all right, I gotta figure this out, because I'm in that situation of a small library where we need to do that.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is perfect. This is what I need. So I have that URL. Does anyone else have any questions? Amanda Lowe at Albany says, what do you see as the future of your chat service? We started doing proactive chat to ramp up their chat over the past summer, and it's been working out pretty well for them.
Well, I will say that I think that we are definitely going to continue to offer a chat service, because there's always going to be a question that the FAQ is simply not going to answer. But I do also start to think that this is going to be a really great way of getting those more complex questions that aren't necessarily like literature search questions or literature requests, but they're questions that we can either send them links to a video to help support them. And I think that's really where our chat service is headed. I don't think it's ever going to drop off entirely. But I'm really excited to keep monitoring how the answers are actually performing, because if we aren't getting the answers that our residents, our students, our faculty need, then we need to address that. So again, it's constant data analysis that we're doing on those LibAnswers FAQ. So it's been really great to see what keeps getting looked at. And then what we also do is we start offering instructional services. The EndNote stuff is huge here. And so we started creating videos to try to address some of those needs. And so to us, this has really been a tool to kind of really make sure that we're again, leveraging technology to reach out to them and to try to hit at least, or try to touch base with at least one patron in some way.
Okay, great. So I'm going to take one last question. We have one more question from the audience, and then we'll have to move on to our next presenter. Jocelyn Ireland says they use LibChat as well, but she's not sure if it interacts with LibAnswers. I believe it does, Jocelyn, but she wanted to know if tagging is what brings LibAnswers suggestions into chat, or maybe they're missing a step somewhere.
So LibChat and LibAnswers are this. LibAnswers is actually LibChat's in LibAnswers. So if you're using the FAQ at all, you could definitely utilize this code because it's going to make it a lot easier for you. The only reason why the tagging is so important is if you utilize your FAQ box, then the tagging is important to make sure that not only is it searching keywords, but it's also searching tags. It's just like you know, it's our own taxonomy. So I'm not sure that that's why it's not coming into chat. In fact, I think that they're not that linked, but you could use this service to start linking them up. And I would definitely encourage it because it's, like I said, it's really been great for our organization.
All right, well, thank you very much, Sharon. We have to move on to our next presenter. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to email her and she will get back to you.
Definitely.